Today, we'll talk about tips for group Disney cruises. That's coming up on this episode 439 of WW Prep to Go. Hello and welcome to WW Prep to Go, where we talk strategy and ideas for Disney World trips and sometimes cruises. I am your host, Shannon Albert from www.prepschool.com. Thank you for being here for episode 439. So I have just returned from my 8th Disney cruise. Half of those, I would say, have been group cruises. And so every time I feel like there's a lesson or a thing I wish that we had done better. So I wanted to bring those tips to you today. Before I get into that, a reminder to follow on social media because we're always posting news and doing Q&As, particularly on Facebook and Instagram, but you'll also find us on TikTok as well. And a reminder that if you want to be a Trip Report guest too, please submit that through the SpeakPipe information in the show notes of every episode. If it works out with our schedule, a member of my team will reach out to you to get you booked for your interview. Okay, let's get into the tips. I think I have 9 of them here. The first one is that you can link your cabins. Now, at Disney World, there is a thing called a travel with number. And this is something I often talk about and recommend if you have 2 or more rooms at Disney World, because you can call, have this number, link your rooms, and then when it comes time to assign your rooms, assuming you're staying at the same resort, those rooms usually get assigned first. So you have a better chance of being put close together with people that you're traveling with, hence the name Travel With. Disney Cruise Line doesn't have a travel with number. I wish they did, but they can be linked. And I think the main reason that I would like the rooms to be linked is for dining, because then you all can have the same, not only dining rotation, but be positioned at the same tables. Now, we had a group of 21. We had 2 big tables, and 18 of the 21 were linked, and the last 3 accidentally got unlinked. This was not a fault of the travel agent. It was a Disney glitch, as we found out. And so on our first night, we showed up to dining, and 3 people in our group on this last cruise ended up in a different dining room. So we worked the whole next day to get them reset to our group, and we did get it fixed. We tried lots of methods, including calling, going to guest services, and the secret, it turns out, is to go to the restaurant manager and talk directly to them, because they're the ones that were able to make this happen. However, assuming you don't have any issues, you will be assigned your dining together. Now, if you're working with a travel agent, they will be able to link your cabins together, just like ours did. However, if you are booking yourself, you should be able to do this by going into your reservation on your account and selecting Add Reservation. And from there, you will need the other reservation numbers of the people in your party, the guest last name, and their date of birth, and then you can add them there. And I think it's up to 4 that you can link in this method. So that is one way to do it. And I would highly suggest that if you're traveling with a group on a Disney cruise. The next tip is to make sure everybody arrives by the afternoon the day before. And the afternoon part is key here. So we always recommend that everybody going on a cruise arrive at least by the day before. There is nothing more stressful than a Disney cruise Facebook group the day of embarkation and watching the last minute people arrive. I have seen people driving in who had a flat tire. I've seen people driving in who ran into traffic that was at a standstill, flights that were delayed. So many issues when you try to arrive the day of. So don't do that. But I do recommend arriving by the afternoon, specifically because getting the group together the night before seems like a really great way to kind of kick off a cruise. Every single group trip that I have been on, there have been people that arrived late the night before and missed the pre-cruise dinner with the group, and they had major, FOMO because they weren't part of it. And so I just feel like if you want to kick it off with a group, give it time so that you have a chance to kind of get together before you actually board the ship. Tip number 3 is to create a WhatsApp chat before your cruise. So on the cruise ship, there is the DCL app that everybody can use, and there is a chat feature in the DCL app. However, it is extremely clunky, and you have to add everybody by a number, and it's just a random number. So collecting, in our case, 20 numbers for people to try to communicate just was sounding like a nightmare. Plus, the chat is restricted to your duration of your cruise. And in this case, if you create the WhatsApp before, you have it beforehand, you have it during your cruise, and you have it afterwards. So it's something that's more accessible. Plus, it's just much easier. Now, WhatsApp and iMessage do work without paying for the DCL Wi-Fi. So you don't have to pay for it. We had people in our group that didn't pay for Wi-Fi. We had people that did, but everybody was able to access WhatsApp. And so that was a really nice thing. And now we still have it now that we're home, and we can still communicate through there if we want. So I do recommend setting that up. We have learned this one the hard way as well. We've been on previous group cruises where we did use the DCL app, and it just was so hard to get set up. And so from now on, we'll definitely be doing the WhatsApp version. Tip number 3 is to make matching shirts for your group. This is fun for so many reasons. One of them is for souvenirs afterwards to remind you of that cruise. It's also great for pictures. It's also fun to match, and as you're kind of walking around the ship, you can spot each other. I've done this in multiple ways. I'm usually the person in charge of it. I've done it in multiple ways where I set up a site that had a design shirt and everybody ordered their own, and we just showed up with them. This last cruise, I got everybody's sizes and I placed the big order and brought them with me, which is a little tricky to fit 21 shirts in your luggage, but that just seemed easier this time. So that's really fun. And I know there's lots of crafty people out there who know how to make shirts. The way that I usually do it is I will often buy graphics online that are already done, and then I'll tweak them to be specifically for our cruise. But there's obviously a million different ways to do it. I do recommend doing at least one matching shirt because it makes for great photos and souvenirs. Speaking of photos, the next tip is to take group pics on the optional dress-up night. So almost every Disney cruise has a night on the cruise that is considered an optional dress-up night. Now, if you're not going during a holiday, people will usually dress up in a jacket and tie or a nice dress and heels or something like that. And because of the dress up, theme, Disney will place photographers in the atrium to take pictures. And these are often some of the best pictures of the cruise because everyone looks so nice. Now, this is especially true for groups because the logistics of having so many people in a photo can be difficult, but the staircase is available on this photo night. And so, in our case, we took up like 5 different stairs, I think it was, and it was a way to get everybody in one photo without having to, try to arrange it ourselves. The staircase on other nights, like before dinner, is often taken up by other things. They might have a character out there, they might have performers out there, they might have other things going on. But on this dress-up night, the staircase is usually available with the photographer, so it's a good chance to get your picture taken. Tip number 5 is to do Palo at the same time, and then possibly you will get a private room for your group. Now, here is how this works. So on this last cruise, we had a group of 8, I believe, that did Palo brunch. And then I think we had a group of 13 or 14 that did Palo dinner. Both ended up being in the private room at Palo, but using different methods. So first of all, I would suggest everybody make their Palo reservations near each other. So for instance, for the Palo dinner, we all agreed day 5, Palo, 6 p.m. And that's when we made the reservation. And we had people in this group that were all different levels of Disney experience. For some people, it was their first cruise. And then I'm gold. So we can all book at different times, but we were all able to get Palo at around 6:30, something like that. The brunch group did something similar. I was not part of that group, but they booked their brunch, close together. So when the brunch group showed up, they all had different reservations, but they requested to be put in the private room and they were allowed to. For our dinner, I actually had submitted a form to Disney Cruise Line beforehand. I will link to it in the show notes since I know people will be interested in that. And I had filled out this form that had all of the names of the people who already had Palo reservations and their stateroom and the number of people in their party. And then we were granted that room for dinner. Now, we didn't find out that we were granted that until we were on the cruise. So if you happen to submit it, you may not find out until close to the time that you're dining there. But we got a push notification in the DCL app that said to call, I think it was, but I was already at guest services. So I just went there and they were able to clarify that we did get the private room. So this is a really fun thing. If you're going on a cruise with, 2 people, 4 people, you can't really do stuff like this. And so if you're with a group, it's really fun to have everybody at one big giant table. The capacity of the private room in the Palo restaurant changes depending on the ship. This was one of the bigger ships, so I think 14 was the max. I think the Magic and Wonder are smaller, but they all have some capacity. And I believe the form that I will be linking indicates what those numbers are. So anyway, book Palo at the same time and then request or submit for the private room if you all want to sit together. Next tip is to prepare kids ahead of time so it's easier when they meet on the cruise, assuming they don't know each other already. In our group this last trip, we had 2 7-year-olds who did not know each other beforehand, but their parents had kind of prepared them. And it made it very easy to go to the kids clubs, and they ended up hanging out all week. And that gave the parents time, away from them for adult only time, but the kids ended up hitting it off, and that seemed like a really fun dynamic, particularly for only children who often don't have another child on a vacation. But in this case, they had a buddy that was built into the group and likely made it easier when it came time to go to the kids club. Next tip is to consider getting a cabana. So the cruise that we went on last week went to both Castaway Cay and Lighthouse Point. Both have cabanas. And it is a perfect opportunity with a group to get a cabana. Now, they all have different capacities, so you'll have to look at the numbers there. I think the cabana we ended up getting at Lighthouse Point had a max of 16, something like that. And so that's a pretty big cabana. Now, I know cabanas are not easy to get. Usually you need somebody in your group that is high status or is booked concierge, because when the booking opens up, then they have first dibs. We actually got ours last minute. Somebody had just dropped their family cabana at Lighthouse Point, and we were like, we'll take it. And ended up being most people in our group, it was their favorite thing of the entire cruise. So let me just sidetrack for a bit and talk about why we loved it so much. So the family cabana at Lighthouse Point, I was a little leery at first because we mostly have adults. And so I thought, why wouldn't we, maybe it would have been better in an adult cabana. We didn't have that option because that's not the one that popped up. But okay, family cabana, we'll take it. And now I am firmly in the camp that I would book the family cabana every time, even if it was adults only. So you may remember a couple months ago, we went on a different group cruise. It had the same itinerary, different ship, same itinerary. So we were at both Castaway Cay. Well, we couldn't dock because of the hurricane, but the itinerary had us stopping at Castaway Cay and Lighthouse Point. So we did go to Lighthouse Point once before without a cabana. And while it was beautiful, we just weren't quite sure what to do with our time there. It's a huge hike. A lot has been said about the walk across the pier, which for us is about 11 minutes. And then you board a tram, which takes you onto the other side of the island. And then once you get there, there's a whole big series of boardwalks that you have to walk along to get to the beaches. So it's just a huge trek. And then once we got there, we just, we were in the ocean for a little bit, and then we weren't quite sure what to do with the rest of our time. However, the family cabanas are on the side closest to the pier. So you walk across the pier, so 11-minute walk, and then all the family cabanas are right there on the side of the cruise ship. And everything else is on the other side of the island. And so the trek to get there is easier, and they'll even give you a golf cart once you cross over the pier. They will give you a ride on a golf cart to your cabana, and so you don't even have to do that walk if you don't want to. So we actually, I think there are 21 cabanas, and we were the 21st cabana. So we were all the way on the end, and it was so much better. We just hung out the whole day here, and I cannot imagine doing Lighthouse Point without it at this point. So the cabana itself was one of the bigger ones. It had like a living room space inside, a dining room space inside, plus a deck, and then the stairs down to the beach. I think it ended up being around $100 per person, and it included sodas, water, fruit, chips. There was sand toys in there. There was snorkel gear. These are kind of things that people pay for elsewhere. And then just like a private beach, essentially. And it was so calm and so peaceful. And although there were lots of families in cabanas, we did not hear them. So it was quiet. And we had great service because there's like an iPad where you can call and order more stuff. So we ordered more Diet Cokes because a lot of people in our group like Diet Coke. We also had many of us had like one alcoholic drink that we ordered, and there's towels. And then also when it comes time to mealtime, the cabanas have their own dining building. So on the other side where all the activity is, there's a couple of dining spaces, and everybody goes there, and it's sort of buffet style. But on the cabana dining side, there's a small one that's just for people in the cabanas. It has more options, and even though it's smaller, it has more food options, and it had hard ice cream as opposed to just soft serve. If somebody has had the hard ice cream over on the other side of the island, let me know. But I've only seen soft serve over there. And the downside of that is that it's often very hot. So that soft serve just melts immediately. So I was thrilled to be able to get scoops of the hard serve ice cream with lots of different topping options. And it was just so private and quiet and beautiful that I cannot imagine doing it another way. So with the group, this is a perfect chance, because if I was going with just one other person, I probably wouldn't splurge on something like this. But when you can spread the cost amongst the group, it is the best way to do Lighthouse Point. And I would definitely suggest it if nobody can get it, like if nobody's booked concierge or nobody is like a high status with DCL, definitely be in your cruise Facebook group and look for people who drop it, or just check constantly for the availability in the DCL app and try to book it for your group. But it was our number one favorite thing of the whole trip, and I would highly suggest it if you are going with a group, or if you're just a family that wants to splurge on it. I think you will not regret it. And the last thing is to share a photo package. So this is not something I'm very good at, but I want to get better at it in the future. So most of you know that with Disney World, there is Memory Maker, or just the PhotoPass system in general. And so any photos you take in there, then you can buy. So if you have Memory Maker, let's say you're at Disney World and you have a group of 10 and you buy Memory Maker, anybody that is connected to you in My Disney Experience, you can download their photos without the watermark because you bought Memory Maker. So on the cruise, you can do an unlimited photo package, and it is linked by your stateroom number. So with a group, the ideal thing would be that the same person scans their stateroom every time, and that way all the photos end up in the same account. And if you have the unlimited photo package, then you can download them for the whole group. So that's sort of the equivalent in Disney Cruise Line space. You don't have to get the unlimited photo package, though. I have in the past just gotten 10, hey, everybody scan my stateroom number, and then I'll go get 10 together and download them and put them out. And this can just be an easier way to do it, and sometimes save a little bit of money. I need to get better about this and do it in the future. I think we ended up just with random ones this time, but next time. Okay, I think that is the end of my tip list. If you have a group that is trying to figure out how to travel, I highly, highly recommend cruises. We keep going back to it as a group who travels together often because it's just the easiest. You can be as involved in group activities as you want. You can sit in your room and read. There's just so much opportunities for time together or not, and different age groups. So it's really just the perfect thing for group travel. If you are interested in booking with a travel agent, which is what we do for these group trips, I will link to that in the show notes for Small World Vacations, because that is the easiest way, and they really do save a lot of work when you have this many people involved. I think that'll wrap up this episode of WDW Prep to Go. For more information, please check the show notes in your podcast app or head to the website, wdwprepschool.com. Click on podcast at the top. Scroll down to episode 439. Until next time, I will see you on the site.